CIVL is like concrete is very important in life, and which in a way is true. Like if you think about concrete is the second most consumed material on earth after water, right? So hello, everyone. Welcome to this month's podcast of Engineering Greatness, which is an original podcast series produced by the American Concrete Institute, ACI. My name is Yogi Sargam. I usually go by Yogi. I'm currently working as the Director of Research at Carbon Cure Technologies. Carbon Cure is a carbon removal technology company based out here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. And we are on a mission to decarbonize the concrete industry. So I've been with Carbon Cure for like close to 1.5 years now. Prior to that, I did my PhD and master's from Iowa State University like 1.5 years ago. And before that, I did work in a cement manufacturing company in India. So like counting for my grad school, I have close to about 8 years of work experience in concrete industry. And yeah, that's about me. And with me today also is Jesus. So welcome to the podcast, Jesus. And if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, and good morning, Yogi. I'm Jesus Gonzalez, research engineer in Fortera. We are located in California, San Jose. And as you mentioned, we are also trying to decarbon the industry, the concrete industry. And before this, I was working in a ready-mix concrete company. I've been working in the industry for almost 7 years. So I know I have a lot to learn, and I hope this podcast will help us both learn a little bit more and help other people to learn about concrete.
Of course, yeah, I'm also looking forward to that. So I think we can start with a few questions that we can have of each other, just talking about our professional career in the concrete industry and also about our journey. So I think the first question that I would like to ask you is, how did you end up in civil engineering? Like, when did you decide to become a civil engineer?
You know, it was like a weird decision because when I finished high school, I didn't know what to study. I didn't know what college to go to. I knew that I wanted to do something around math because I've been feeling all my life like I'm good at math, I'm good at numbers. So I was looking, okay, so what careers involve math and what can I study? And I was like discarding some careers that doesn't have any math. And I finished up learning about civil engineer and how because you're also a civil engineer, right?
Yes, I am.
So how we help to build the world in a way, and how you have to do some calculation to be able to know what sizes of beams, of columns you have to do, and that kind of caught me, and that's how I decided to become a civil engineer. So yeah, what about you? How did you decide to study civil engineer?
Yeah, I think mine is kind of also similar, but I don't remember a time when I like actually decided to become a civil engineer, but my inspiration kind of goes back to childhood when like I was like 9, 10 years old. I used to have lots of questions in mind about how different things operate in the world, especially related to the built infrastructure and all those things. But I was a shy kid and was too afraid to ask them to anyone. But to my father, I mean, being a father, he knew that I was shy, and he also liked explaining things himself to people. So because he knew, so if I asked one question, so he would try to explain everything to me, especially like, let's say we're taking a train, passing through a bridge, and he would explain how this bridge was built. How different like skyscrapers or big buildings are built that time. So that kind of like intrigued me and made me ask more questions. And that is kind of, again, looking back at my career is now why I think that maybe that was kind of inspiration. But then cut to like 10 years later, when I went to university, I ended up choosing civil engineering. Again, not sure why at that time. I also had a similar journey as you, like in terms of I liked science in general, science and math. So I knew I wanted to do something like civil engineering or material science, or mechanical. But then, yeah, I ended up choosing civil engineering. And like looking into hindsight now that I also did my grad studies, master's and PhD in civil engineering. I remember one incident, again, going back to when I was 12, 13 years of age. Uh, the earliest memory that I have of building something of my own was that time when I was building a small like birdhouse using those clay bricks.
Okay.
And it was kind of interesting. Like I don't know why I chose to build a small house, like a clay, using clay bricks, a small birdhouse, but I did that. And why I remembered that incident in particular is because I accidentally had cut my fingers during that process and got scolded heavily by my parents that time. So that's why I remember that incident. And also because that was my first experience of building, because it is always, you feel satisfied or something when you build something on with your own hands.
Definitely,
And
definitely.
yeah, so that's why now when I think back, maybe I was destined to be a civil engineer. Although, I mean, now it's more kind of materials focused, not
Yeah.
building big buildings or bridges, but still, I mean, it is an important part of civil engineering. So
And I
I
and
think
I
that's where
wanted
it
to
all started. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention the same thing that you said about us being now in the material side of the civil engineer. Because when I was a kid, I also used to play with Legos and try to build things, but I was never able to build something from my own creation. I always
Mhm.
had to look something that was already built and then try to replicate that. And and I think that may be one of the reasons why I moved towards material side of the construction, because I don't have to build something, but to help somebody else or to help all the team
Mhm.
to try to develop something together. So yeah, I think that's one of the reasons
Which
why I went to material. Yeah. And also you mentioned that you were a shy kid. I also consider myself as a shy kid. But I think that's something that we should improve to get a better career or get a better position. So you think you have improved on that?
I think, well, I mean, yeah, I did try like later on in my life, when in my professional life, when I went into work in a company where you have to, present to an audience. And so that kind of helped me. And also I was trying to fight. I also have stage fright. So whenever I go on stage, I
Yeah.
always, yeah. But now then, yeah, I have developed, so now I'm more comfortable than I used to be. But I think, yeah, these things will develop over time, and I think I'm far better than when I was like what I was as a kid in terms of, yeah, presenting
Yeah.
my ideas and all those things. So yeah, which now I think brings us to the next question, because we talked about civil engineering in general, and then now we're working with concrete materials. So when was the point that you decided to choose to work with concrete in general, or like cement and concrete?
I think it's kind of like a funny story because, um, well, when I was in college, we had a class called concrete technology. So in that
Mhm.
class, uh, you have to participate in a contest on which they gave us like some statistics and this parameter for a concrete mix. So you have to give us a concrete with this strength and this slump and whatnot. Uh, so my team and I, we wanted to win because if you win that contest, you can go to one of the ACA conventions. So we
Mhm.
were trying so hard to win that contest that we were making a lot of mixes every day. And it got to the point that I was so tired of just making mixes. And I say to myself, if we don't win this, I'm never going to make another concrete mix ever in my life. And we lost. And I'm still
Oops.
doing mixes. So I think that's kind of funny. The thing is that at that point I was tired of the concrete. But by the end of the class, my teacher mentioned to me that they were looking for a teacher assistant. And at that point I could use some money. And I said to myself, okay, let's try this. And I talked to him. He gave me the opportunity to be a teacher assistant. And I think that's when I get to learn more about concrete and see that not only as a contest or as a competition, but of something that I can learn. And I fell in love with concrete, and I think that was the moment on which I decided to start in the concrete industry.
That's
What
great.
about you? Did you have a similar
Uh,
story, or did you choose by
I
yourself? I want to be somebody in the concrete industry.
Well, I mean, I kind of also have a similar story, although I mean, it's again kind of little funny that when I was in my undergrad second year, I guess, is when we used to have lots of concrete related courses.
Okay.
Even when you study those structural analysis, you have the structural analysis courses, even that was mostly related to concrete design. And I remember like out of 5 courses, 4 had to do something with concrete. And that's when like that was like my first semester into civil engineering. And that time I had this like coined this term for civil is CIVL, is like concrete is very important in life. And which in a way is true. Like if you think about concrete is the second most consumed material on earth after water, right? So uh, later on when I went to, so yeah, I mean, undergrad passed away, then I also learned steel design and all those things. But then I ended up working with a cement manufacturing company where I used to go to different job sites, construction job sites, and do those testings with concrete. And that's when I think I got more interested working with
Mhm.
concrete. Just looking at, it appears to be a very simple material, like looks like anyone can make it, right? I mean, it's very easy to prepare
Easy.
concrete mix, and which I agree in a way, like it's not rocket science, you're not building rockets, but there is a bit of, or a lot of science and engineering involved behind
Yeah.
this, making this, wonderful material. And like, yes, you can make a concrete, but to make a good quality concrete, you have to have expertise in there, right? So
Yeah,
that's when yeah.
I always seen concrete as an iceberg. You know that picture that you have the top of the iceberg and then it goes wider and wider. That you can see that making concrete is really, really easy. But whenever you start learning about cement, about aggregates, you start to see that there are a bunch of things that you have to be taking in consideration before making a really good concrete mix.
I think, yeah, that's a great analogy for concrete. So yeah, I think that's when I decided to, pursue a career further in concrete, and came to grad school, did all my research related to cement and concrete in my master's and PhD both. So I think I am very much happy with the career that I chose, especially in
Mhm.
civil engineering than in concrete industry. Yeah.
And when
Um,
did you decide to move to another country to do your PhD and all that?
it was, yeah, when I was in my job with the cement manufacturing company back in India. It was kind of a different position that what I was in. It was related to technical services. So I had
Mhm.
to go to different job sites, which was good, but I was not doing anything to do with research per se. Like I was not directly involved in research, and that's where I felt like I should do more, get involved more scientifically with this excellent material. And that's when I had started applying for master's and PhD to different universities here in US. And yeah, luckily I got a position at Iowa State, which mostly I applied through directly to the professors, looking
Mhm.
at their profile. And the professor that I work with, Iowa State, Kejin Wang, she had matching interest profile with what I was interested in. Like nanotechnology of concrete is the area that I wanted to work on, and luckily I got that position, and like thankfully I was able to finish PhD there. So yeah.
And was it easy for you to move all the way from India to United?
Well, I mean, it's never easy to move to a new place, be it like even within the same country. But yeah, moving to a new country was difficult. When I first came, I remember everything was new to me. It is like altogether different continent and so far from here. So yeah, I mean, everything seemed different, like from people to the work culture to weather. Like weather was completely, different here in Iowa. But yeah, then slowly I got used to it. Like there were people who helped, and slowly then everything became normal because I was there for like 4 years. And now, funnily, like when I go back home, I take time to adapt to the conditions there. So it has now just reversed, kind of. I need to go in there and adapt to conditions there. Which I think you have had a similar experience, although you recently moved to the States from Mexico, but how was your experience like?
Yeah, like you said, it was kind of similar. After being that teacher assistant, I started working in the concrete lab at my local university, and then I moved to another job in a ready mix company as a quality control engineer. And I got to the point that I was feeling that I was doing the same thing every day and probably solving different issues, different problems. But the big majority of my work, it was kind of like the same. Uh, and I wanted a bigger challenge, and that's when I decided that have a foreign experience out of my country, it will help me a lot to develop a better career, a better profile, and just to get out of my comfort zone and try to be better. So I started applying to different works from Canada in the States and just applying. And at some point, I had the opportunity to decide between either going to Pennsylvania or coming here to California. And this one, coming to California was like my best option because it is more like a research industry. And I was going to be able to do different things every day and also try to solve a problem. So yeah, I got this opportunity. I talked to my girlfriend, I talked to my parents, and they all support me on this decision because it's not, like you say, it's not easy from a country to another country. And once I approve all the interviews and they offer me a contract, I had to start doing all the visa paperwork, and it took me like 2 months to get the visa, which is a short time compared to another type of visa as you can get. And once I getting here, like you say, having like a different culture, a different weather, some new people, being hearing English all the time, which is something that I wasn't used to. So it is hard. It is really hard, but I think at the end of the day, it is worth it to do it.
I think, yeah, I mean, so you first decided to come to the States, then you took up this job, like, which was like, yeah.
Yeah, I would say I decided first to go out of Mexico and try to get that foreign experience. And I was open to possibilities, either going to Canada or to the States. Pretty much I was aiming there because I knew that they wanted people with the ACA certifications, which I have. And it was funny because whenever I had an interview and maybe they didn't call me back or they didn't send me an email, I used to ask them like, hey, what do you like from my profile? And they always say, your certification, those are really push up for your profile. So that's why I was like aiming for Canada and for the States. And then Fortera gave me this opportunity, and I didn't let it go.
Yeah, I think there is like ACI certifications has, a great demand in the concrete industry in general, because we have also been looking for people who are ACI certified
Yeah.
to join us. So I know it is. It always helps. Um, yeah. So like what type of research are you currently involved in at Fortera? Like what's your everyday job like there?
Yeah, we are developing green cement based on calcium carbonate. And pretty much what we do every day is try to get a mix with the lower amount of clinker possible. I'm sure you know that's probably the best way to help the environment. And every day we do mixes, just mortars, maybe concrete, maybe just pastes. And we are trying to see what works the best with different combinations and all that. We measure slump, we measure flow, we measure durability. So that I would say that's what we do every day.
It's
Being in
quite
the
cool.
lab like 80% of the time, 20% of the time being watching data, I mean, reviewing data, giving presentation on what we learn, what we have find out. Yeah.
So it's mostly hands-on work in lab.
Yeah, it is a lot of hands-on. Uh, I mean, you have to like making concrete, because making concrete is it's hard, it's demanding, and one mistake can take the whole mix away. So, and also you have to be positive about it, because I've been in that position on which you are making 4 mixes. Two of them are going pretty good, and then you made a third one and something goes wrong, and then you are going down now, and you have to do a fourth mix, and you want to go home and all that. So you have to be really positive to keep that high mind that you can do it and do that fourth mix and just continue with the day and day.
I can totally relate to this because we are making concrete today in lab too, and where we
Uh-huh.
have to collect lots of samples, and there's lots of planning that we had to do like 2 days before making concrete today. So if you
Yeah.
just mess up collecting one sample, then like you have to redo it again. So I can totally relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think it helps not only in the concrete industry, but in all of the careers or places, to have a positive mind and try to see the good thing on everything, even the bad results or the bad things that happens, and try to get the best out of it. So you said you are a director of research, right?
Yes,
So
yes, I am.
what should I do, somebody like me or somebody starting in the concrete industry, to get to be a director?
Yeah, I think when I started here at Carbon Cure, right after my PhD, that time I was looking for jobs when I was about to finish my PhD, and I ended up looking for this position like on through LinkedIn. And when I joined as a research scientist, which involved more of like, let's say 30% of hands-on work in lab, and then more of planning what projects we should be working on in the coming, let's say, 3 months. Then after that, so that time I had a team of like 1 or 2 people. But then later on, after 6 months, I was elevated to the position of director, where now I have a bigger team, a bigger responsibility, less of hands-on work, more of planning and guiding a team of like 6, 7 young research engineers and co-op students. So yeah, that's about me. And how I got into this position is, I think, mostly based on my research in my grad school. So in my master's, I worked on the thermal properties of concrete, where I'll also use some machine learning algorithms, which is in demand these days a lot in any industry. Then in my PhD, I worked on the nanotechnology of concrete. So I guess, and also when you do research and you're studying in grad school, you do learn different skills, like you have hands-on experience working with TGA or XRD and all these. So I think all these things help me get to this position of research scientist, like the technical capabilities. And later on, when I moved to this director position, I think this also requires, along with those technical skills, this also requires some, leadership capabilities as to, because suddenly now you're not doing things just on your own. You need to like decide which projects are important, which ones we should be taking up first, and what are the different tests that we're gonna do. How do we look at the data? So these things I need to decide before working on the projects. And then at the same time, you have to train other people as well as to how to do a particular test in lab, right? So I think all these things are involved in there. So yeah, I mean, what is your research, and what's your background in terms of the skills that you have learned? I think can help you get to this position, like anyone in.
What other skill would you say, like personal skills, would you say somebody needs to develop to be successful in the concrete area?
The concrete industry in general, or for this position in particular, are you talking?
This position, like in the research area.
Well, in research, I think first of all, like it is interesting to work on. If you're genuinely interesting, it is very interesting to work on. But sometimes research could be challenging too. Like you have days when you're working on something and you're not getting good results. So I think it requires a lot of patience if you're working on a project in research, especially lab-based experimental research. Other than that, I think to be a good researcher, there are a few things which, from my experience, I think are important. One would be attention to details, because there are small things that matter when you look at the data that can just completely change your data. So I think attention to details is one thing. Then one important thing which I have recently learned is also to be free of any experimental bias, by which I mean that sometimes we collect a data and then trying to look at it, and we see what we want to see from that data. It's not it should be the other way around. Like you see what the data tells you, not what you want to see, right? I mean, so sometimes that can just completely change what the data that you have gathered from that. So I think that is one important.
Yeah, I think in those cases, it's really helpful to get to present the data to somebody else who can see it from out of space. You know what I'm saying?
That's a great point.
That's definitely helpful.
Yeah. So yeah, I think other than that, just like, ability to ask questions and ability to solve the problems, also like identifying what are immediate problems to solve, right? So that is a first question, and then those problem solving abilities. So I guess, yeah, all these things is what makes a good researcher, especially talking about concrete research. This is what I would say. Yeah. So talking about that, I think you are working right now as research engineer there at Forterra. So what advice would you give to someone who is starting new and want to get into your position? What are some of the skills and abilities that will be needed?
Yeah, I think some of them are going to be really similar to yours. My first advice will be to always continue learning and try to learn more about not only concrete, but also cement chemistry. I've been finding out that there are a lot of chemist people in the concrete industry, and they do know a lot about cement. So sometimes I've been feeling overwhelmed of them because of me coming just from a civil engineer perspective. So once you get to see the concrete and the cement from the inside, from the cement chemistry, I think that's when you start to understand what's happening inside the mix. So I will give that advice to continue learning, to read more about cement and try to get in deep on what you want to research. And for the skills, I would say you have to be a teamwork. You have to have teamwork ability, definitely, because you are not going to be making concrete mixes by yourself. You definitely need somebody to help you, at least one more person, and you have to get along with him. You have to be always positive and see, like I said before, the good things in every outcome, and be able not only to say, hey, start mixing, hey, weigh this up, hey, clean that, but to be a leadership, like you said before, and show with the example. And if you want to keep that place clean, okay, we are going to clean together. So definitely be a teamwork person is helpful. Attention to detail slash being organized, because in concrete we test at 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, 28 days, sometimes even longer. And there's always the possibility that you forget that you have to test or break those cubes, those cylinders. So you have to be organized. You have to have that attention to detail and be checking your schedule, your notebook, or wherever you keep track of that. And don't forget to do those tests. And finally, adaptability, to be able to change on depending what are the demands on the company, because being in this position is kind of like a middle position. So you are getting info from all over the place, from on top, from the bottom. So priority change a lot over the month or the year. So you have to be ready to change what you are doing and keep track of what you're doing before, to then continue that work like in 2 weeks when that work gets back to be a priority. So I would say those three skills are definitely needed to become a
Absolutely,
good
yeah.
research engineer.
I think, yeah, I agree with all the points that you raised here. I think all these are needed to be, I mean, a good researcher in general too, like the points that I talked about. I think these are great additions to that too. I think, yeah, now we can talk about a bit about ACI, like when was your first introduction to ACI, and how has your experience been so far? And also, how do you foresee your involvement in future with ACI? If you can talk about those.
Yeah, my first contact with ACI probably was like 6 years ago, maybe 7. When I was a teacher assistant, uh, my boss in that moment, he was going to the meetings from the local chapter, and I asked him, hey, what are those meetings for? What are you guys doing in there? And he invited me, hey, come over here, what we are talking about, and start learning more about concrete. And that's when I get to met them and see that they are making those technical meetings every month. They are giving those certifications. They have all this data available for you. And I like a lot, because that's when I started to get those certifications and see the value out of them. And in the future, I would like to contribute to the ACI more. Last convention was my first convention, and I like it a lot. I learned a lot, and I would like to be part of a committee and try to help to develop something. I know there's a chapter in California, so I may try to look for them and see if I can help them in any way. What about you? When did you met the ACI?
I think for me, the first introduction that I had was during my undergrad. I knew about ACI at that time, like it's a professional organization related with concrete industry, but nothing much at that time. It's only when I came to grad school and started going through those codes and reports from ACI for my research is when I got more involved there. And also through my supervisor, my advisor there at Iowa State. She's an ACI fellow, and I used to watch her every semester, like every fall and spring, she would go for this convention. And I just wondered, like, what is it about? So then I asked her, and when she explained to me, like, there are people from industry, there's people from academics, all like small group of concrete industry people and academics. So then initially it sounded to me like a good opportunity, like, to be honest, a good opportunity to network, and especially from the perspective of job search, right? I mean, at that time, mostly what you think about is like looking for a job, and then this is a great opportunity to meet new people. So then that time I went for ACI convention in 2018. I think it was fall 2018, yeah, in Vegas, or spring. Um, and I also presented a poster there. So there are student poster sessions in every convention, I guess. So that's where I presented first. And because I got a chance to present, then there were many, industry people, academics coming to see the poster presentation. And then I talked to them, met other people through different sessions. So it was a great experience, my first convention. And after that, I think COVID happened, and then there were not many face-to-face ones, but I recently went to the one in Dallas last month. And since then, I think I've been pretty much involved in different things, like in different committees, contributing in writing reports, and also whenever I go to conventions, participating in those technical discussions. You get to learn a lot as to what research is happening right now in the concrete industry. So that way, I think it has been really wonderful to work with or get involved with ACI. And I believe like it is the best platform if you want to grow your career in the concrete industry, and a necessary one too. Like, you would definitely want to be involved in this one. And there are like different opportunities also that you get through ACI. Like recently, I went to this leadership conference in Pittsburgh, which was sponsored by ACI. And I think that attending that conference through ACI has helped me in my job also, because it was a leadership conference. I was new to this position of director here at Carbon Cure, and it has been helping me quite a lot to work with a team. So it's been wonderful to work with ACI so far, and I think in future also I'm going to be like more involved in all those different committees and doing more things with ACI in future, I guess.
Thanks everyone for joining us, Yogi and myself. Thanks for listening to this month's episode of Engineering Greatness. Join us each month as ACI brings together pairs of young professionals in the concrete industry to engage in intimate conversation about their life and work. So be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And for more information on the American Concrete Institute, visit us online at concrete.org. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.